Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this video I'll be showing you how to cut this bustier blouse with draped yoke. The first picture is the sample that I used to make this gray one. If you're new to the channel, please kindly subscribe to this channel, and if you find this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Let's get started. So like every other video that I've done on bustier blouse, I'm going to start with drafting a basic bodies, and that's by marking the shoulder and the armhole divided by 2. The armhole divided by 2 that I'm using for this is 9 and the shoulder is 8.5. So the armhole divided by 2 has given me the chest line, and so I marked the same shoulder measurement on the chest line and connected it to the shoulder measurement at the upper part. So the next measurement is to take the vertical measurement, which is the shoulder to bust, the shoulder to under bust, the shoulder to waist, the shoulder to full length plus 1.5 seam allowance. So I took this measurement on another part so that I'll be able to form a straight line. Now I'm drawing out those points and I'll be labeling them as the bust, the under bust, the waist, the full length, and seam allowance. I kept the paper on fold because we are going to be doing an asymmetric cutting for the neckline. So I took the natural neckline of 3 inches and I went down by 1.5 for the front shoulder slant, and I added 0.5 for the shoulder seam allowance. Okay, so I've labeled the lines, and then I'm putting the bust divided by 4 on the bust line, the waist divided by 4 on the waistline, and then the full length, the round full length of the person divided by 4 on the seam allowance line. So I'm connecting the point together, and there we have the bodies. Okay, so the next thing is drawing the armhole measurement, and then I measure what was left by 2. The midpoint I went in by 0.75, and then I curve out the armhole. So the next thing I'm doing is to mark the nipple to nipple measurement. The nipple to nipple measurement of this person is 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I put exactly that 4 on the bust, the under bust, and the full length, and then I drew out the line. Now on the waist I took 0.75 on both sides, and then I came down by 1 inch from the bust point, and I went up by 1 inch from the full length measurement, and then I'm going to be drawing out this dart. This first dart is the waist dart. That's your normal waist dart. Okay, the next thing is to put the bust dart. The bust dart is the distance between the shoulder to waist for the front and shoulder to waist for the back. So mine is 1 inch and I put it there. So I want to do the under bust tightening, and I measured the shoulder slant and divided by 2. I connected the midpoint of the shoulder slant to the bust point, and then I went up by ½ inch. Okay, so right now I'm going to be determining how low I want the yoke to be. So I used about 7.5 or 7. I think I used 7 for this, and then I drew out the line. Okay, so I used 7, and then on that point, from the line that is coming from the mid shoulder slant, I took 0.75 on both sides of that line, and then I formed the dart. So the dart is connected to the ½ inch above the bust point. Now I'm going to be doing the under bust tightening. The under bust tightening is your round bust divided by 4 minus your round under bust divided by 4. Whatever you have, if you have like 1.5 for instance, you share it not equally. You make the side front, what you are putting on the side front, to be more than what you are putting on the center front. So for this one I use 0.6 on the center front and 0.8 on the side front, and then I curve it and connected it to the dart that we have on the waist. So on the full length, I tightened the area by taking 0.5 on both sides of the nipple to nipple line, and then I connected it to the waist. So you can see that we have the bustier drew out already. So I'm going to be cutting out those points, which is the dart. So the next thing is to determine the sweetheart neckline, the depth for the sweetheart neckline. You may use 1.5 or 2 inches. For this I use 1.5, and then you just draw out the neckline. So this upper part right now will be for the yoke, and the down part is the main bustier. So we're going to be drafting the back. The first thing I did for the back is to mark the zipper allowance. I'm using zipper allowance of 1.5, and then you're going to draw out the line. Then I put the shoulder measurement and then the armhole measurement divided by 2. Then I drew out the line. So like I did for the front, on the chest line you're going to put the shoulder measurement and connected it to the one on the upper part. So I marked the shoulder to bust, the shoulder to waist, and the shoulder to full length plus seam allowance. The shoulder to waist for the back is minus 1 inch because of the bust that we put for the front. So if your shoulder to waist for the front is like 16.5, for instance, the shoulder to waist for the back will be 15.5, depending on what you have used for your bust dart. So if you are using 2 inches for your bust dart, you know that you are going to minus that 2 inches. So I just labeled the lines as the bust, the waist, the full length. So on the waist, I went in by 0.75 for my zipper dart, and then I took it on the zipper allowance line too. That's 0.75. Now from that point on the waist, I put the waist measurement divided by 4, and then like you have seen me do, I put it from that slanted line also, the bust divided by 4, and then the round full length divided by 4. To put the waist dart for the back, I measured the actual waist for the back and divided by 2. Then I went back to the first straight line that I will have for the zipper allowance to know how and the distance for the waist for the dart, so that I'll have a straight line, and then I mark it on the chest line and the full length. That way I'm able to have a straight line for my dart. So on that line I took 0.75 on both sides, and then I went down by 1 inch from the chest line and went up by 1 inch from the full length, and then I drew out the waist dart for the back. So I went down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant for the back, and then 3 inches for the natural neckline, and when I connected them together I added ½ inch back for the seam allowance for the back. Then you're going to measure what is left on your shoulder, and then you get the midpoint, and on that midpoint you go in by 0.25, and then you draw out your armhole for the back. I measured to confirm the length that I use for the yoke for the back and the front, so that I'll use same for the back, and then I drew out the line. Then I extended the dart leg to that point, so that I'll be able to cut the dart through. Then I put the ½ inch tightening on the chest line, and then on the full length to tighten the back. So I used ½ inch on both sides of that line that I used for the dart for the back. So right now you just determine the wideness of the back neckline. You can use like 4.5 or 5 inches. Then from there you're going to draw out the yoke for the back. But before I proceed, I have to cut it through, so that whatever I have for the back and the front will be the same. So I slanted I curve the hem points to avoid sharpness there, and then you're going to be adding your dart allowance back, especially for the back. I'm not going to add that of the front because I'll still have to fold the bust dart. So for the back, on the waist I'm adding 1.5, on the chest 1 inches, and on the full length 1 inch. Then I connected it, and then you note the seam allowance that you're going to use for the sewing. So for the front, I calculated the darts that I'm taking out plus the seam allowance I'll need to use to sew it, and then I wrote it down so that when I'm cutting on fabric I'll be able to add it back. Okay, so we are cutting it out. You can see that I have not cut the dart yet. I'm just cutting out the side, the armhole. I've not really cut out the side because I've not folded the bust dart. So you just cut the shoulder slant. Just follow through the way I'm cutting it out. So I open it up to draw out the neckline. Like I said, it's an asymmetric neckline, so you're going to determine the neck wideness, and then I determined the off shoulder point for this other side, and I use 5 inches, so I connected it to the 5 inches. Okay, so I'll be cutting out that point. So this is how the neck part will be. Then I cut out the yoke. So this is how the yoke will be. Now that part that is off shoulder, I marked the person strap to strap, which is 6 inches plus seam allowance, and then I have to redraw the armhole for that part because it will be an off shoulder. That side will be off shoulder. So I just place it with the main bodies, and I measured again. That's 6 inches plus 1, that's 7 inches, and then I redrew the armhole and cut out the excess. The strap to strap depends on the size of the person. This person is bust 40, so for them you can use like 6 inches, but someone that is like bust 35 to 36, you can use like 5 inches or 5.5. Now I have to cut open the dart in order for me to be able to fold the bust dart. So I'm cutting out the waist dart through the under bust tightening and the over bust tightening, and then I remove one of them so that I'll be able to fold the bust dart. So I reconnected the line so that it will be straight, since after I folded the dart the lines were not aligning, so I just reconnected the lines before cutting out the side. So you just cut out the darts completely on the center front. That way you're going to have a complete piece for the front. So these are the pieces for the front. Now moving on to the back, I'm going to be pinning down the seam, the zipper allowance. So I just cut out the zipper dart first, then I'll pin down the zipper allowance so that we will be able to draw the back neckline. Just cut out your pattern correctly, and then we're going to open it up like this. So like I did for the front, I determined the neck wideness, same neck wideness that I used for the front, and then the where the off shoulder will be starting from, which is 5 inches, and then you connect it like that, just like we did for the front. It doesn't mean that it has to be the same shape with that of the front. You can see that this one is different. You can just be creative with it, and then you put the strap to strap of the person. If it is necessary, you redraw the armhole to make it off shoulder. So I'm just cutting out the neckline for the back. So this is the yoke for the back. I have to cut it out because I have to cut out the dart of the back, and we are sewing through to the end. So I'm cutting out the waist dart for the back. So these are the pieces for the back like we have for the front. For the yoke for the back, you may decide to leave it or create a prototype and use net to do the drapes. Then you use the prototype to cross-check, or you can decide to slash and spread it like I'm doing right now, and then use it to cut the net. But I prefer that you do your net and then you gather the net and then fix it like this. So this is the outcome of it. If you found this tutorial helpful, please kindly give it a thumbs up. I'll also drop the link to the video of the sewing of this blouse. Thank you.